Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to one more session, Coding Night, New Zealand. And tonight we have a special guest, William Liebenberg. How are you,
Hello.
William?
Hi. I'm very good, Marcel. Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, well, very happy like to have you here. We've been catching up like this past few days, few weeks, and wow, it's just a pleasure to have you like on our user group. You're coming from Melbourne.
Okay, no worries.
How are
Yeah,
things
yeah.
over there?
It was very cold this morning. I actually went to Auckland maybe 3 weeks ago for Serverless Days ANZ, and it was warmer
Yeah.
in Auckland than it's in Melbourne, which is super weird. And I know this because I used to live in Hamilton. So, uh, yeah, I know it could get cold there, but it was backwards for some reason recently. So, yeah, I kind of wish I was still in NZ.
All right. Well, hopefully like you enjoy like your staying here, catching up like was really great. But tonight,
Mm,
right? So you're bringing like enhancing local microservice development with .NET Aspire and Dapper. Wow,
yeah.
that's a really interesting topic. What are you gonna do with the demos and yeah, what are you bringing to us?
Well, I'm going to try and convince you to use Dapper and tell you what it is .NET Aspire. And I've got lots of demos, so a little bit more sort of practical hands-on stuff, and a few quirks that I found along the way. Definitely stuff that you can complain about, but also how to fix it. All right, so there's a decent intersection with these two uh, frameworks, and I'm going to show you how to use them to pretty much tick all the boxes, make everything green, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And all the code, all the stuff you're going to see is free, so you can have it, play with it, and then learn a bit more. So yeah, and this is sort of real practical experience that I've sort of gathered playing with Dapper and Aspire since pretty much Preview 2. Preview 1 was pretty basic, and then Preview 2
Yeah,
came out, and it just started skyrocketing from there as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
nice. Well, top notch for like
Yeah,
the
all right.
audience. I think that's a really interesting topic. Yeah, really looking forward to that. Before you start, William, let me just welcome the audience. If you are new to the user group, well, I'm just introducing here like we're Coding Night user group, right? So we have like a goal really. We're not here just to do like cool demos. We really want like to become like a more like a community group of developers, and we always like get to share like things that we do like uh, on daily basis, right? At work, following like best practices. As you can see, right, we're a community group of developers. We love coding and follow best practices on software development languages and technologies, right? In general, we tend to focus a little bit more on the Microsoft stack, but we are always open to any technologies, really. And the intent of the user group is to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. You're always going to find like some great contents from different speakers where like if you're a junior dev, a lead developer, you're always going to find something that's interesting that you can apply in your own studies or at work. And I would like to mention that we are part of AzureTire.com, we're a community or group of, well, of cloud native enthusiasts, and we get to share about the latest and greatest on the cloud native space. We're also sponsored by .NETFoundation.org, which is an entity that looks after the different open source .NET projects. And we have recently been sponsored by JetBrains, right? That's the software tooling for developers, where, well, in general, like on the .NET space, we tend to use like Rider as the main IDE, but there are like lots of tools that we can make use of.
So
And
it's
with
okay
no,
if you use Visual Studio tonight, right?
that's perfectly fine. I use like a mix of both, to be honest.
All right, cool. Me too.
Uh, well, William, the floor is yours. Let me bring like your
All right.
screen.
No worries. Let's fire it up. Okay. Can you see
All
my
right.
screen? All good?
Yeah, you're in.
All right. So yeah, as Marcel introduced before, I'm going to be talking about um, unleashing the power of microservices using Dapper and Azure Container Apps, and focusing on the local dev experience mainly, but I'm also going to deploy something for real to Azure. So a little bit about myself. My name William Liebenberg, the solution architect at SSW. Recently, I became Microsoft .NET MVP, so that's pretty exciting. If you want to get hold of me on X or Twitter, there's my handle. I also have a very outdated blog called azuregems.io, but I promise to keep that up to date one day soon. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. Right? Have a good chat there as well. Now, I started coding a long time ago. Wrote my first program on Spectre Video 328, big beige box. It's sort of the Commodore 64 era. Just typing stuff out of a book. I didn't know what I was doing. I was little, but stuff happened on the screen. I was super excited. Pretty much been hooked on computers ever since. That's in the early 80s. And then, I started doing 3D game dev with C++ since 1999. But then when .NET 2 came out, I skipped .NET 1. What's this fancy new tech from Microsoft? I don't know. I tried out .NET 2, and I've been hooked ever since 2006. Pretty much built my whole career on .NET since then. Similar story with Azure. Pretty much a day doesn't go by that I don't do something in Azure with a bunch of these things you see there. So, distributed apps or microservices are painful, right? You see, this is a small set of the concerns you have when you have even not microservices, just a piece of software. The complexity of the software, the discoverability in terms of the SDK or the API, and even the service, right? Service discovery. Dependencies, service to services, and dependencies in the code, debugging, all these things, are painful. All right. So tonight, we're going to look at how to solve some of these problems. Now, with microservices, one service, you have these problems. Two services, you add all these problems again. You're compounding your problems each time you add another service. Debugging gets harder, deployments get harder, resiliency, observability, scaling, the whole lot, cost for sure. It just all gets out of hand, right? So we're going to go and see what to do about it. So I'm going to talk to you about what is should actually say Dapper first and then Aspire. So my agenda's just got a little bug there. So I'll start with Dapper, and then I'm going to move to Aspire. I'm going to show you a demo of how to add Dapper to a .NET, ASP.NET API. Then we're going to see how we can put Aspire on top of Dapper and eventually deploy to Azure. So in all our wisdom, we came up with this little scenario here where we want to compete with one of the online stores, and we came up with our own set of microservices to replicate or to present our stores. We've got a cart service, a product service, order, and user service. And each of these services, apart from ordering, all of them have to store some information. So we've got some logical stores there, and we're also going to have a little event-driven architecture here by using a message bus. So we want to be able to make requests between services to send and retrieve data, and then we want to sort of publish some messages to sort of go towards that low coupling between our services. All right. So this is where Dapper comes in. And it's not the ORM, not Dapper with two Ps. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about database SQL queries or object mapping. That's not what we're on about tonight. It's about the distributed application runtime. It's an open source project for building event-driven, portable microservices. All right. I think it's like currently the ninth largest project on the CNCF. It's here to stay. It's got a lot of usage, and I think I read a stat the other day that almost the majority of the deployments that I've done with Dapper I've done into AKS. I'm going to show you how that works in Azure Container Apps as well, for a much, much simpler scenario. So my top 3 reasons of why I would use Dapper, as you'll see, you get to write code against really simple abstractions for common problems you would encounter when writing microservices. All right, it'll become clear pretty soon when I show you the code. You can really forget about the infrastructure specifics of where your app is going to run, right? And it's sort of like, in a way, not just a runtime for building microservices, but it's also a supercharged infrastructure as code um, scenario, so that you can literally, without modifying anything in your application, you can completely swap out a piece of infrastructure, like what message bus service you use, or what storage mechanism, or secret store configuration mechanism. You can actually swap out those pieces of infrastructure without your application knowing anything or being modified at all. It's really, really cool. So in the end, all of this lets me go and focus purely on solving business problems. Now, what is Dapper really? It's a platform, like I said, for building microservices, but it can run anywhere. It's very agnostic in terms of what it runs on. So you can run on Kubernetes, Azure Container Apps will show you. You can run on all the clouds, your local machine, and any VM, right? If you feel like owning a full VM, go for it. You can run Dapper there. And Dapper is multilingual. What I mean is there's SDKs for .NET, Python, Java, Go, PHP, JavaScript, and they've got C++ and Rust in development. So that's pretty exciting. Some pretty high performing stuff there. I don't know why anyone would want to add it to a PHP WordPress website, but it's there. So go for it. Just imagine how much longer WordPress is going to hang around. I don't know if WordPress microservices is a thing, but this kind of enables that. Now, we'll hear a lot when we look at the Dapper website about building blocks. What are they? So they are, again, abstractions of small pieces of concerns or common concerns that you don't have to deal with the vendor specific details of that service. You don't have to know the ins and outs of Azure Blob Storage or S3 buckets. You're just talking about storage or state store or state management. And the big deal about Dapper is that it's built on the sidecar architecture. I'll show you a picture of that shortly. But essentially, it is another app that runs next to your application, and it does all the heavy lifting for all these components, all these building blocks. So building block, like I said, it addresses common challenges in sort of a codified best practices approach. When we don't have to deal with it, we just use it. They take care of all the hard stuff. They're essentially just APIs between our app and the sidecar that can get invoked via HTTP or gRPC. So gRPC is awesome, lightweight communication, very fast, low latency. It makes a lot of sense to use that in a microservices scenario. So examples of what a building block is, you've got service to service communication. So one API talking to another API. Dapper brings automatic service discovery so that you don't have to deal with host names and ports and all the configuration overhead. You just give your app or your services logical names, and Dapper does the discovery for you, figures out the routing, and it just makes it work. Super nice. State management. So think of basic key value stores. It's not a relational database component at all. It's just for key value pairing. So Redis is a great option there. Cosmos DB, Blob Storage, even SQL Server, table with 2 columns. There you go, key value. There is a component for that. And PubSub for messaging or events that you want to send through a bus. So you can use Azure Service Bus, Kafka, RabbitMQ, even Redis. Redis kind of does everything. So there's a Redis PubSub built in as well. So you can use that. And I think that's actually one of the first demos will have that in there. So I'll show you how that works. Then you've got bindings. So you can actually go and write up your own bindings that would be running as part of the sidecar, but not in your app. And for instance, one good one is SendGrid or SignalR. So you just send a little payload from your app to the sidecar via one of the binding methods. I'll show you that in the demo as well. And the sidecar then takes care of the rest for you. So you don't need any dependencies for SignalR or SendGrid in your app. The sidecar actually takes care of that for you. And it's a whole lot more. I'll show you a big list of stuff in there, similar to this. So, like I said, state service to service invocation. You have two services talking to each other. State management, pub sub, the bindings. You can get more advanced with actors, more observability, secrets, config, distributed locks, and workflows. So think of, say, durable functions. If you have used Azure durable functions, that workflows SDK from Dapper is near enough the same thing. The code is almost the same. So it is really, really cool for writing long-running workflows on a full-fledged non-serverless type Azure Functions app. Okay, so but yeah, that's definitely a bit more on the advanced side of things, but it is super cool. And they've also recently added a new cryptography um, building block. But yeah, so screenshots just a little bit out of date. So just basically, you can see here on the one side, you've got your app and the Dapper sidecar. And that Dapper sidecar can then deal with all these building blocks for us, so state stores, pub subs, etc. You can see just a very small subset of the real services that you can back for each of those building blocks. So with state stores, there's Cosmos DB, Firebase, Redis, Cassandra, etc. And say for what's an interesting one? Cryptography, Key Vault, Kubernetes secrets, local storage, right? There's a whole lot of stuff in there that you can check out on the website. So there's way more than 100 components now. And so how this works, you've got your app on the one side, and the only dependency that our app really would need to have now is dependency on the Dapper the Dapper CLI client. Or if it doesn't want to take a dependency on the Dapper client, it's just HTTP calls between our app and the sidecar. So for instance, to do the service-to-service invocation, you can see there, sort of by default, your sidecar always runs on port 3500 /v1 /invoke, and then you just call the service, which is cart service, and the method is new order. It's like invoking a action or a controller action on another service via the sidecar. So I'm just talking to the sidecar and say, invoke new order on the cart service for me on my behalf. But who wants to write all these HTTP requests? That's where the Dapper client comes in, which simplifies all of this for us. Same with state, to retrieve state item 67 from the inventory, state store, there's a request for that. So for publishing messages and retrieving secrets. So if we just step back a little bit, on the left here is our application code, just all our business concerns. The Dapper sidecar is the thing that really has the dependencies on all those services. It knows how to talk to blob storage and S3 buckets and RabbitMQ, Kafka, etc. None of those dependencies live in our application. That's kind of nice. But I'll show you how nice that really is in one of the demos. Zooming back out even further, when we have a lot of services or microservices, you see they don't actually talk to each other directly. They talk to each other indirectly via the sidecars. The sidecar is what is doing all the work for us because it knows which service is on which hostname and port, which makes life a lot simpler for us. Now, if I have a scenario where I've got a front-end app and a back-end app, each of them have a sidecar. The components, or the building blocks that we can share between multiple microservices. You don't have to have a separate set of resources for each application. You can use a whole bunch of them in a sort of shared way. Now, what does it look like? There's always YAML involved in something like this, so here's a little bit more. So in this case, I've got a state store component. What's important here is I have to give it a name. This is the name that I will use in the code to reference this component. And I then also have to say the spec type. So in this case, state.redis. And then I give it the information for how to connect to this Redis instance. On the other side, I have a state store again, but this time it's for Cosmos DB. And again, all I do is provide the information it needs to be able to connect to that Cosmos instance. PubSub, very same thing. give it a name, same name that I want to use with the alternative. I'm saying I'm using pubsub.redis. I then want to swap over to Azure Service Bus, same name, because my app only deals with that logical name, but the type is different, and the connection details or the metadata for that one is different. Cool. So to get started with Dapper on Windows, easiest way, use winget, install the Dapper CLI, you then do Dapper init, and it'll download a few containers. So you need Docker Desktop to do this. Once all that's done, .NET New, make a new microservice, and you basically only have to add 2 package references, and you're on your way. But you can't just press F5. You should use, or you have to use the Dapper CLI to run first the sidecar, and then Dapper will spin up your app for you. So you can see here, Dapper run. I have to give my app an ID, so I'm just calling it my microservice 1 -- The next command then is, how do I run the app? So in this case, just .NET run. You get a lot more verbose than that to get things done. But yeah, so you have to use the Dapper CLI to run a Dapper microservice. And it'll take care of spinning up all the components and forming the connections and do the service discovery so that your app can just run nicely. So this is the scenario. We've got our Dapper shop. We want the user to come in and through the API gateway, make a request to the cart to add an item to their cart. But first, I have to make sure that this user is a valid user. So check my user database to make an instant or direct service-to-service call to, hey, does this user exist? If not, chase them away or just give them a nice error message. Then make sure that the product they want to add to the cart also exists. So I call the product service. Then finally, once I've added something to my cart, I can save that to the store and send a message to the bus to say, anyone who wants to know, William added a banana to his cart. And then they can go and react on that and do a few things. You can build this out into a much more complicated system where there's a fulfillment system. They're going to pull the banana off the shelf, put it in a trolley, end up somewhere in a shipping facility, and on your way to your house. And then along the way somewhere, they can send you an email. But I'm going to keep it a bit simple for tonight. All right, so let's go and jump into some real code. I'll wait for the Bluetooth keyboard to turn on. So here is the coded version of that Dapper shop. So I can collapse this a little bit here. You see a whole lot of microservices in one project. I've got my gateway, got a notifications API, which is sort of like a catch-all for all the messages currently. I've got orders, products, shopping cart, and user management. They're all pretty basic services, and not much to it. They're pretty short there. It's got a few, a user service. I'm not following any clean architecture or vertical slice or anything. This is my GSD, get something demonstrated architecture, just super simple, but it works really well. So, and you see I've got here a Dapper client that I'm injecting into this user service. Now that comes from that Dapper client package we referenced. We also have the ASP.NET Core package as well. So those are the only 2 dependencies I currently have in my app. So I'm injecting that. I'm going to keep that for later. And for instance, when I want to call the get user method, if you remember the diagram, I need to pull a bit of state. So I store the user records in a state store. And I just use this Dapper client.get state for a particular type using a reference to the store name. So if you remember from the screenshot, I had dappershop.statestore in that YAML file, and then the key. So in this case, just the username. So just to show you what I'm talking about in terms of that component, the state store, here's the YAML file. And here's the name, dappershop-state store. And then we're also showing just the basic connection details. But that's how I reference that particular state store. So very important. You can have multiple state stores, obviously. You'll just have lots of extra YAML files with different names. Okay, so then I just get that user and display or give their the DTO back. So I've got a whole bunch of other ones here. It's pretty basic. The other way is here, if I want to add a new user, make sure they don't exist, etc. Then I'll just, same thing, save state async, give it the store name and the key and the value that I want to store. I just want to show you real quick this Dapper client. This is the thing that I would use way over any making manual HTTP requests to the sidecar. So this Dapper client is the thing that gives us that interface to just get on with it. So if I want to delete states, I want to delete my user, I use that. I want to do some encryption, however that's set up, use that. I want to invoke a method on another microservice, I can do that. What else have we got? Publish events, so I'll show you the usage of that shortly. Query state, so I can actually write it's like a JSON matching filter to do all sorts of queries on the state that I have. It's way different than SQL, so it's a bit tricky. And save state, start workflows, etc. So not a massive interface, but it actually covers almost those 10 building blocks that we have from Dapper. So they're all there in this one client or Dapper client object. And so I built all these apps on that. So let me show you an example of when I add something to my cart. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. You see I've even got the pub sub in here with a topic for cart items and also for orders that are being submitted into a queue. And actually, I'm setting up quite a bit of stuff in this one, so I should take one step back. First, I want to be able to talk to the products API and the users API directly. I want to make a service-to-service call. So I can use a Dapper client to create a HTTP client that does the service discovery for us. And all I have to say is I have to give it this logical app name, so products API. And same with the user API, I do that. And that name comes from when I run the Dapper CLI, I say call it product API, well, the app ID is products API, the users API, cart API, etc. So that's important. So I'm creating that client there and I'm injecting it into my cart service here using keyed services. And when I want to go and make a call, it's just use that HTTP client, which it is, if you dig into it, it's just inherited from the normal HTTP client, but they do a few sort of customizations under the covers there. And then I just got all the regular methods to be able to get stuff from the other service. So here, I'm just calling the products get endpoint and putting a product ID in the query string. Cool. And we'll try and debug this in a bit. So I'm making a call. I'm trying to get a product. If it's not there, complain. Otherwise, I go on. I make sure that the user exists. Again, if it's not there, complain. And then I get my cart and I adjust the cart by adding an item in there. And then just saving the cart back to the store. So this get cart calls get state. And when I'm ready to save, I'm just sort of saving state again. But then to be able to tell everyone that I've added something to the cart, I just create a new event here, whatever shape you want to have for your events. And I use the Dapper client to publish event async to the pub sub name, that logical name, on the topic I'm interested in, and I give it the event or the message. It's that simple. All right. So I've explained a lot. I haven't run anything yet. Okay. Now, you can't just, I can try and run this app through Visual Studio, but I know it's not going to work because it's not starting any of the sidecars. I have to start the apps using the Dapper CLI, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 apps to run. I have to open up 6 console windows, write 6 massive long commands, and I can't be bothered. Instead, luckily, Dapper has a multi-run or multi-app run file that you can go and fill in a few details about each app. And when you do Dapper run with this file, it's going to do the hard work for you. It's a little bit going on here, you look at this and got to really read it closely. So I've got an app here for the notifications API. So that's an app ID, that logical name. Same with orders API, products API. I have to tell it which folder the app lives in, the app port number. So for instance, products API, I have to look at the launch settings here, and I look at what's the HTTPS port 7084. That's what I put in there. And then the most horrible way of saying .NET Run, I have to add in .NET Run, the specific project, because I'm running it from a root folder, no build and launch profile, and that's a fair bit. Let me zoom out a touch. Yeah, so there's quite a bit in there to run each app, but that's okay. Write this once, and then I don't have to do it again. But just to make sure my demo code is live and it should work. It should hopefully build to a green state, and it's looking good. I'm generating all the Open API specs with NSWAG in the background, and I'll just show you one more thing that I did. Because I've got a gateway that runs on YARP, I take all the Swagger files from the microservices and I merge them together just using this Open API merge tool. So then I've got one big Swagger for all of the apps that I run through the gateway. So it simplifies things a little bit. Okay, but let's just check this out in action. So I'm in the right folder. Yep. And I just want to run this file. Let me just show you that again. Okay, so I'm going to run that npx command after building the solution, and then I want to run Dapper and give it that run manifest there. Okay, so let's do that. Run ps1, and it'll just do a quick build again, and then fire up all the apps. This might take a moment. Marcel, are any questions in the chat yet?
Not yet. I may have like questions come from me. I think like what you put in there, like for the merge, right, or the Open API, the Swagger definitions. Oh, that's really cool. I'm definitely
it's very handy.
that.
Yeah,
it's handy. Yeah, I agree.
I'll show you that. I'll show you what it looks like now. If I open up the gateway, and of course, there's nothing there because why would there be anything on the default route? So I have to go to my Swagger route. And so it's a bit misleading. This was the first API in the list that it merges, so that just calls the document that, but I'm sure there's a fix for that one day. So I've merged my user endpoints, my products, my cart, my orders, all of that. And you can, if you want, I can go to the individual ones here, right? And you can see the URL. It's a little bit small, but it's to products v1, orders, etc. But I just want to go to the gateway. This has got all of it in there. The good thing about this is, just sort of a side note, is that if I actually wanted to generate a client off this one spec, that's easy for people to integrate to my microservices, right? They just need to know what the gateway is offering, not what my 300 little microservices in the background each one are doing. No, that's crazy. So there's other ways of doing this, but for local dev, this works quite well. So yeah, just to make sure that all works, I'm going to try this out, and I've got a user in there. Brilliant. And yeah, my details are there. Just zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, I can run product query. I can look at my cart. I don't know if I've got anything in here anymore, but let's have a look. My cart is currently empty. Oh, okay, cool. So let me just add something to my cart. And I want to add product ID 1. I want to add one of those. And then I'll run into some problem. Problem though, I can't really do anything now, because if I go back to Visual Studio, well, I'm not debugging. I can't hit breakpoints. I want to add something to my cart service. It's not hitting this breakpoint because I started everything with the CLI. Quite annoyingly. So I then have to go and attach to the running processes. So I'm just using Visual Studio, and because everything has a nice prefix, it's easy to just go and select them all. That looks like hard to see, but they're all selected. And we go attach. And now, once it's done its thing, oh ho, it's happening. All right. All right. So let's just see. If I try that again, where's the button? I'll go here. Try that. Aha. Okay. We're in business. So now I can debug my app and see what on earth is going on. So I know I've got one. I got product ID of one. I've got the username, and I can. Yeah, I've got a product. Yeah, it's valid. So I can inspect the product. It's got. Oh yeah, it's just a piece of bread. Yeah, it costs $5. That's quite expensive. Um, the user. No, that doesn't work.
Mhm.
Oh, I did something with my user. I didn't actually look. Actually, I just spotted it. Sorry, I can't even
Triple
type
L.
my name. Yep, there we go. All right, let's do that again. Run. And did it get stuck on Visual Studio? Oh, yeah, here we go. So let's double check. William, yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, all right, user is valid. I get my cart, what's currently in there. So there's nothing in there. Okay, so I'm just going to skip over that. So now my cart should have one entry in there. Click that. It should. There we go. I don't think that expands, but anyway, there's my cart item there. Bread. Okay, cool. Bigger. There we go. All right, we can debug now, and I can save that to the store, which is great. I'm actually using in this instance, if you remember on my state store, maybe didn't point that out. I'm actually running Cosmos DB locally for my state store, so I can actually go and inspect that. Just open up that data explorer, and here we go. So that's the state store, and items are probably a little bit hard to read now, but here we can see I've got a few keys. Here's my data. There's my product ID 1, which is bread, and a few of the other ones. Here's my user details. Now, there's a few specifics here about how Dapper state stores work with the key that I give it. It actually prepends the app ID as part of the ID, the partition key. All right. So even though I've got multiple services using the same state store, they're isolated or separated by the app ID. So you can't have two apps actually sharing the same piece of data, even though using the same state store. So it's very important. It's like a double pipe here, but if I were using actors, they put some actor ID in the middle there, and then the key that I gave to the state store for this particular item. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff I'm storing in here. Here's my actual cart. So here's the items I have in my cart right now. So yeah, one piece of bread. I go back to here. Oh, Visual Studio's waiting for me. Let's go back. Where is it? There we go. Go to current line. So it's waiting for me to publish a message, which I'll just let it all run and do its thing. You can see on the command line here that yeah, it took a while to do something that timed out. But here's one message from my notifications API. It was listening for a message coming in. So the one that I added to my cart was taken care of. So if I just do another one, I'm going to add in product ID 2, 2, whatever that is, and just F5 on that. And we check out the CLI. Yeah, so another item, 2 of them was added to the cart. So my message is not great, but that's the notifications API telling me something was added. All right. Then going back to Visual Studio, to be able to listen to those messages, I'm just going to show you the catch-all. Yeah, that one. Yep. Because I'm listening for messages on this pub sub for a couple of different topics. So the first one is just adding items to a cart. So if I'm just going to find that cart topic, all I need to do is to use this sort of decorator on my API a minimal endpoint with topic, and then give it the name for that pub sub and the topic. and the sidecar will receive the message from another sidecar, and it just does a post to my app. It's literally, if you've set up Azure Service Bus, RabbitMQ, all the clients and stuff you need for those to listen for incoming messages, it's a lot of work. To be able to listen for messages, I just use that. Pretty simple. There's actually 2 ways you can do this. So I'm actually going to just quickly comment this out. So here's the delegate. I can actually decorate the delegate with topic. Yeah. Maybe because I'm running, it's not doing IntelliSense for me. But I do the same thing here. Pub sub name and cart topic. And then you can actually add a few other options here, like only listen to messages that has a source of a particular service, or for people whose names contain the word Marcel. So you can actually write some filters in there to filter the messages that you listen for as well. So that's the alternative, but for some reason it's not working right now. But you just use this topic, not with topic attribute to essentially get the same thing. All right. So lots of stuff going on there. So a lot of microservicey things. And the worst thing is I actually have to run from the CLI, then attach with Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code has got an extension that tries and fixes it for you. Writer, similar issues with this. You've got to set up a whole bunch of stuff just to get that F5 and debug experience from your IDE. It's all quite annoying. But at least we have this tool now, the multi-app run, to bring it all together. Okay, so that for the demos, I'm just going to stop debugging, and I'm going to check here. That's still running. So you can see my proxy is just doing all the work through the gateway and moving stuff around. But I'm going to kill that. And just for Marcel's sake, he wanted to know, I've just got this Open API merge JSON configuration file, and I just give it, format that correctly, the location of each spec, and it merges them into one output for me.
Cool.
It works, but
Yep.
maybe a few little side effects. But yeah, there's other tools. If you know better tools for this for local dev, let me know. All right, so we know a little bit of how to Dapper now, right? So we saw clicker works. There we go. Service-to-service discovery. You can create your own HTTP client. State management is easy. Get state, save state. I didn't show you the query state, but there's a crazy little filter you have right there, and pub sub. Yeah. So there's 3 building blocks. There's a whole lot more. So then, looking at that YAML file, what we have here, just bring that up again. So here's a state store. So I started off with Cosmos DB locally, right? But I can actually, just as easily, I can undo that, and actually have just in separate files. But now I can run Redis as my state store, right? My app doesn't change. If I look at any of these, for instance, the shopping cart, there's no Redis, there's no Cosmos DB, there's no any dependency to those things in my app. I've just got Dapper, right? So you can imagine if I've built this as an artifact, the YAML file for Dapper, I can modify that, but my build artifact doesn't need to change. So that infrastructure change is quite straightforward. All right. So you can imagine this is sort of our logical view of all these microservices that we built. So locally, clicker doesn't want to work again. There we go. If I run this on a VM, or pretty much like local, I can run all Redis, because Redis does everything. Or if I then go and ship this to Azure, I can run container apps, and I can use Azure Service Bus for the message bus there. And I can use Cosmos DB or Redis or Blob Storage or Azure SQL for all those different stores, right? Whichever one works best. And again, I just take the same container or build artifact, run it in the cloud, and give it a few different YAML files, which is very, very nice. So in summary, for Dapper, building blocks to use them are easier. It reduces my overall complexity. It's just I have to just know the basics, understand those abstractions. Off I go. Dependencies, most of them are removed from our apps. Less NuGets, less restoring, less code, is generally less headaches, because there's no configuration or setup. I just do add Dapper, and then I just use the Dapper client interface, and I'm on my way. Like I said a few times, it's easy to replace that infrastructure without modifying my app, and I can just focus on solving problems. But local dev sucks a little bit because I'm still on the console. I still have to, the CLI spitting out logs from 6 different apps is messy. You can separate them out to different files, but then you got another headache there, debugging, observability. You can see it's a whole lot of problems. And this is where .NET Aspire comes in. Now, this definition for .NET Aspire is it's an opinionated, cloud-ready stack for building observable, production-ready, distributed applications. So if you read back on the Dapper one, there's a huge intersection here of these two frameworks. Okay. Now, what Dapper gives you is all this tooling to make your local dev experience for microservices or distributed apps better. So there's orchestration. So that run file that I had there does something similar, but a whole lot better. I'll show you that shortly. The components is similar to the YAML components. So we can add SQL, we can add Postgres or RabbitMQ, but it's just a little bit more coupled in the Aspire way than it is in the Dapper way. So you can choose which one you want to use, right? You can sort of shift your goalposts of, do you want to have a bit more coupling with using or knowing that you are using Azure Storage or Redis in your app? Or do you want to be very agnostic and just use the Dapper way of swapping out this YAML file? So you've got choices there. The Aspire observability is the next level compared to Dapper. And the tooling, it's for Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, and the CLI. It's all there to be able to take or add Aspire to an existing application or starting a whole new one. So we get this fancy dashboard that shows us the resources that we're running and all the details, the logs, and traces. Everything we want is in there, right? So, and metrics, very, very important stuff that we never used to get easily on our local dev experience. That one-click starts everything mentality from Aspire. What that means is it can start all our apps, all our projects, any executables or any containers that we specify all at once. We're going to get that F5 experience very easily with Aspire, and that's what it promises. As well as it says we can run Dapper sidecars and components as well. So let's see how that works. I want to jump to a very quick demo. All looks very similar. It's my Dapper shop again, but I sliced a whole bunch of stuff out because I didn't have enough time to upgrade all the pieces. So I have just a few of them. And right now I have the shopping cart, products, and orders. But I did something a little bit differently with the products one. Instead of using state store, I actually use a real SQL relational database to store my products and to do my queries. Just to show you again, it's a microservice, very GSD, get something done. We're using very straightforward Aspire component to add a SQL Server DB context with, again, a logical name. So this is very much like the Dapper flavor of those app IDs. I'm doing the same thing here in Aspire. I think you can see one of the dependencies I need here. There's an Aspire Entity Framework SQL Server dependency that I need to be able to get this component, to add that here. The old school way was to add DB context, give it a connection string. This does it magically for us. So we'll see how that works. We get a connection string from the Aspire app host into our app magically. I'm still adding Dapper, running migrations. I'm still saying here, this is a Dapper method to listen for messages, sort of the incoming pub sub events. And then everything's pretty standard, right? Just normal endpoints, talking to SQL, and off we go. So what is new with the Aspire for pretty much all our apps is if you any of these ones, you're just going to right click, go add, there's Aspire orchestration support or adding an Aspire package. What it'll do, it'll add 2 things to your project if they don't exist. The first one is it'll add this new app host project. And that's the thing that I'm keeping this for last minute. This is a thing that orchestrates all the services and resources in your project or your microservice ecosystem. But then there's also the service defaults library. And there's a whole ton of stuff in here that is all about telemetry or open telemetry, health checking, or the resiliency of your application, and all those sort of metrics that we want to add and visualize in the Aspire dashboard. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. This is just out of the box, right? I haven't touched this at all, but you can modify this and do a few more things to it. For instance, there's a standard resiliency handler. If you want to explore something here, there's there's a hedging handler, which is pretty awesome. Like if you have 2 or 3 replicas of a particular backend, you can send the same request all 3 at once, and whichever one comes back first is the one that's used, and the other 2 are thrown away. That's kind of cool, but a bit more work to set up. All right, now this app host, this is the only thing we have to run to get everything working in our microservice project. We don't have to run anything individually anymore. We don't have to go to the console to start anything. I can run it all out of Visual Studio or Rider. Rider has a plugin for Aspire, so make sure you get that. So you might be used to seeing the web application builder. Now you've got the distributed application builder that you use to then orchestrate and define all the stuff that goes into your project. So in this case, I'm adding Dapper, so you have to have the Aspire hosting Dapper NuGet reference. I'm configuring a Dapper state store, and I'm using, again, that same YAML file from before to say use Cosmos as a state store. I'm adding PubSub, which is just a built-in one. By default, it's going to use Redis. And again, here's those logical names. Now I'm getting a little bit more complicated. I want to add a SQL Server. I'm saying on a particular port. I'm using a data volume so that I can persist data between multiple runs. If you don't add that, each time you run, you need to reseed everything. It's a brand new container, brand new database. It surprises a few people. You can play around with all the mounts as well, and all the scripting you want to run and things. There's definitely a lot of info in the documentation about that. And ultimately, when an Aspire knows whether I'm running locally or whether I'm being published, so I want to say this particular SQL Server, when it's being published to Azure, well, don't just publish a container, because I understood everything is a container. In this case, publish it as a real Azure SQL instance, and it just takes care of all the rest for us. So I get a reference to that SQL Server, and to that SQL Server, I want to add a database, I give it a name. So you see this SQL DB, that logical name, again, is the same one that I reference here. So this is how I'm forming the connection between my app and the orchestrator. Product service, I'm adding that. Here's some magical code that's being generated that shows where on my computer that project lives. All right, Aspire does that for you. So I'm adding a project, so you get a reference to that service, and I'm just adding public endpoints to it. So it has to be accessible from external calls. Otherwise, it's sort of like a private service inside of a network. Can't get to it. I have to say with Dapper sidecar, so I'm adding a sidecar to this project. And just for local dev, a bit of a nitpick here. I have to, if I'm not publishing, I have to say what the app protocol is, HTTPS. You can't run HTTPS without this line here. Everything just stops working very quickly. So just a little bit of fluffy code here to, if I'm being published, don't set this, because when I publish, it actually works. And if I'm not publishing, say that I'm running on HTTPS. Yeah. Now, what I also have to do is, for each of these services, I have to then tell it what are the related or the reference to resources. For my product service, I definitely need access to the state store, the PubSub, and the SQL database. Same with the cart service. I'm adding this project, and I just did backtrack. If I did go right-click, add Aspire orchestration support, this line is automatically added to the app host for you. You don't have to write this or know how to write this. The tooling does that for you, so it's nice and discoverable. Again, I'm just configuring all the same way, same things for all the services, and You can even run executables. So if you run Dapper space dashboard, you actually get the Dapper dashboard show up. And I'm just sort of adding this in here just to show you can run executables. But I actually want to exclude this from the publishing manifesto when I deploy this to Azure, so I don't need that. So without further ado, if I press F5, it goes and builds everything, and it's going to start up as usual. And in a moment, you'll see the Aspire dashboard popping up. Look at all this stuff. I might zoom out one. There we go.
Nice.
What are we looking at here? There's a yeah, it is nice, but what's all the stuff? Let's make that a little bit bigger here. So on the one side here, you can see the type. There's a SQL container running. So this is running the latest SQL Server container for me on my local host. Awesome. I can view the logs for the SQL Server. Right. I can go back here. I can look at any details about it. There's a whole bunch of things in there. You want to see my password? No, you don't want to see my password. I can run more other executables. So in this case, that Dapper dashboard that I orchestrated here, I can click on that. Here's the Dapper dashboard, and it can shows me the apps I'm running with Dapper. And I can dig in there to some more stuff. But I don't use this very much. It's not super useful for most of the cases, but it's got a basic information about each app. And then here is that Dapper run app. You can see this. What's the easiest way? Let's put some notepad. Okay. Whoop. Now make that big. Oh, that's a lot of stuff in here, right? So this is a massive command line that it's running for me, right? You can see, luckily, I don't have to do any of this. Okay, and you can inspect all the stuff here, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. All right, so that's the command to run the sidecar for the cart service. And then I'm running the cart service here as well. So let's just see. We've got logs for this. Yeah, these logs are very noisy. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's not color-coded, unfortunately. But if anything goes wrong with your sidecar, you can check out the logs for it. Same with your cart app here. I can see the standard logs for the shopping cart and all the other services. So this one hasn't got a gateway, so I just got to hit it directly from the Swagger page. But here we go. Here's the same sort of thing. I'm going to try it out, get some information. I've got stuff in my cart already. Okay, cool. In this case, I'm just going to go to the order service. And this one as well, it is listening. Here we go. See, I'm listening for a new item being added to the cart. And I'm also listening for when new orders are coming in. So when someone checks out, I'm going to hit a breakpoint here, right? So if I check out, then boom, here I am. I'm in the order service and waiting for a new order. So this actually went to the cart service. Let me show you that. I'll show you the full end-to-end. There should be a checkout here that I go and publish to the pub sub, basic name, the new .orders topic. And if I go back to the other program CS, same pub sub, new .orders topic, and I've received that new order, and I can go and run through all the code for it, and voila. So let me get a 200 back. I'll go back here and take the breakpoints off, and then show you in the console. So for my cart, I said checking out 2 items, and in orders, you can say that we received a new order with 2 items of cheese in there, and yeah, it's adding it to the order queue. So let's see if I can do this live. Let's do that like this, side by side. All right. So now I get my cart theoretically should be empty. Yep, there's nothing in there. So I'm going to add something to my cart, and great, because I think it's in there. Go execute. Again, now I'm just checking stuff, same sort of pattern as before, just F5 that. I'm hitting the SQL database, just F5 on that. And where did the dashboard go? There we go. All right. You can see here in the cart, something happened. Oh, maybe because that bread doesn't exist. I haven't added bread to my. Let's add more cheese. That should be a valid product. Oh, I also got 500. Okay, something went wrong. 404. What happened? Am I doing the wrong thing? Mm-hmm. Right. Oh dear. Okay. Now I don't know what I did. Must have done a typo somewhere. Yeah. But the idea is all the messaging works, and I'm pretty sure I made a typo somewhere. All right. But the magic is here in the app host. Right? This is what we use to say all the stuff we want in our application, how they're configured, even how they're configured when we publish to Azure, and how they are related to each other. So we build this application graph. Okay. So, and the nice thing is I can F5 and I can debug everything. So I should really be able to go and sort out the little bug there. But you've seen me do some coding before. So let's go and look back at the slides. Now, Aspire doesn't actually deal with deployments directly. It's there just to let you describe what you need in your system, but all the deployments is handed over to something else. What it does produce for us, though, is this application manifest file, and it's like a JSON payload that describes all that C# code we wrote before in the app host. We use that manifest with the Azure Dev CLI that then will go and analyze that manifest and work out the resources and the way to deploy that to Azure. That manifest can also be used for, excuse me, AWS, or even go into Kubernetes. It's another open source project called Aspirate. So you take that manifest and you can deploy all of that into a Kubernetes cluster. If you want to own Kubernetes, it's a little bit more complicated, but sure, it works really, really well there as well. So the easy way to do this, we generate the manifest. If you want to see what's in it, you do .NET run publisher manifest. I've never seen that before, but yeah, now I know. And you can tell it where you want to store this manifest file. So you can go and inspect it, but it's even worse than reading a bunch of YAML. But the AZD understands it. So all we have to do there is, if you've already logged in, you only got two commands you have to run. AZD init, and if you have a lot of subscriptions, you have to specify which subscription you want to use, and you got AZD up. And it takes that manifest file and it just makes it happen. Now, it does take a little while to run, but in essence, when you do AZD init, it goes and looks into your current directory and goes, oh, okay, there's a .NET Aspire app. It thinks that it can host it with Azure Container Apps. Then it asks you, do you want to go ahead? And you go, yep. You give it an environment name, and it goes and just gets things ready for you. So there's an azure.yaml configuration file, and it asks you, hey, run AZD up. Sure. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to run AZD up. I specify the region where I want to create this environment, and then it just runs to completion, basically, right? So this is a slightly shortened version, but it deploys the container apps environment, the SQL database, managed identities, etc., and then all the container apps to match each of my services or projects that I defined in the app manifest. Now, this is the easy way, and you can keep doing this. And just to show you it running, I have here one I deployed earlier. So here's all the stuff that deployed. And if I want to see all green, I ran this for real. I'll run it again. So just let it run, take a moment. And when I go back to the slides, too far. There's the harder way of doing this, but a better way. You can run AZD and do the login, initialize, but there's a synth option in here to generate all the bicep code for you, matching that manifest. What Aspire doesn't let you do currently is specify network security. If you want a VNet, private endpoints, a whole lot of very Azure specific things. That's not in Aspire yet. So for serious apps, you have to do it the hard way. And once you have your general microservice project or setup done, then you don't really need to go through the step that much, or rely on this too much. Once you have all your custom bicep and workflows set up with CI/CD pipeline, great. You still have to do that. Unfortunately, that's not stuff that's in Aspire yet, but hopefully one day it'll be there. So you can run the AZD infra synth, it generates all the bicep. You can tweak it to your heart's content, whatever you need, and then off you go. It's just more work, but you can still make sure that you build a really secure app. By default, you don't get all that nice stuff out of the Aspire deployments. So let's just go and check on our real deployment. Oh, what a stitch up. Oh, that's because I was running it. Oh, that's my own fault. Okay. Theoretically, that wouldn't have broken the real app. Okay, cool. Yes, it didn't do anything. So the one that I've deployed to Azure, right? So you can see I've got a container registry. I've got the container app environment. We can see here that it's got Dapper enabled. So ACA or Azure Container Apps comes with managed Dapper. It takes care of the sidecars and provisioning them and making them work and all that for me. You can see here's the two components that we define, and it's got all the info for them, what they are and passwords and all that config. And then we can look at the apps. Here's the 3 apps that I added in here. So here's the cart, for instance. So it's the same one I was running locally, but now it's running in Azure Container Apps. Then check this out. They decided to add the .NET Aspire dashboard into the
cool.
container app dashboard. So that's super new. I don't know if that was there a fortnight ago, but it's there now. So I can open up this thing. Of course, it's on the wrong route. Here it is. I'm running that cart in Azure. So try that out. There's nothing in there. Hopefully this one works. I'll just quickly give it a go and say bread. That should work. Sweet. Okay, I can have a slice of bread on this one now. Yay! So, all right, small. Yeah, now it works. Okay, so definitely may have made a typo somewhere. But yeah, so I can open up the Aspire dashboard in Azure. Initially, Aspire was not meant to do anything about deployments or go into the cloud or whatever. But during all the previews up until GA, the story has changed so many times, and people just want this with everything. They want it in there, but it's still not there to replace a real APM like Datadog or App Insights, Azure Monitor. This is there. It's nice, but you don't need to go and replace it. And so, like I said, there's console logs. You can see the structured logging is all there, so you can look at the details for all your logs. Like if you used to Seek, you get that sort of flavor of things. You can even wire Seek into the dashboard as well. If you didn't know, you can see the traces. So this is like seeing the network traffic between apps. This one will be quite a bit in here. Let's just zoom out a little so we can see here even more. So here, when I add to cart, right, I can view this trace here and see what took time and what talked to what, what's the routes, and there's some details in there. So observability now has gone next level. So I was getting this locally actually, and now I've got it just out of the box on an Azure Container App setup. Awesome, right? How cool is that? So you can definitely go. Oh, and then metrics is another one. So looking at a bunch of cool things that would plot for you, but I probably haven't generated enough traffic. You can look at the request durations. You look at the number of clients that are actively on there, the number of open connections. Okay, I'm not using that, so it's all flat, but this is nice things that you would normally have to spend quite a bit of time looking at. Let's see if the last hour. Okay, yes, I haven't used much here. But yeah. Oh, and there's all different revisions and replica sets. So yeah. Now, didn't expect this to be in Azure, but it's there and it's super nice to use. So you can play a bit more with Azure Container Apps. That's a whole new talk by itself. But we can see here, same thing. Dapper is enabled. And port numbers, the protocol is HTTP. You can change that. More logging. You can add more components if you needed to as well. So there's a whole lot in there, and we can see that failed, but I'm not sure why, because I was running that, so doing the same thing again, and go back to the slides.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Definitely going too far. So this sort of love triangle between Aspire, Dapper, and Azure Container Apps is pretty cool. We have a .NET app, we add Aspire, we add Azure, we add Dapper, and we can add Aspire, and the sort of general workflow would be to run it in GitHub or Azure DevOps, produce a container, and then push out the container apps. That's a very, very nice story. So that's the deployment I wanted to show you. Yeah, but I'm just running it from my local at the moment. So in summary, for .NET Aspire, the local dev experience is awesome again. So I can just code away. I've got a beautiful dashboard. I can see everything. And I've got like one click starts everything, including all the Dapper stuff. It's beautiful. So it just makes things work. I'm going to say it's not just for microservices. I know there's distributed apps and everything inside of the code. But if you think about any API with a database or a state store and a queue, there's a distributed app. Orchestrating all that stuff is hard work. This makes it really easy. It's really, really nice. And that just leads to a massive productivity boost. Okay. So let's just one quick last check in on that deployment. Is it green? It's busy. It didn't crash. So that's good.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
This has done one. It's done one of the 3 services. So I'm happy.
Yeah.
uh, and then now to wrap up, right? We saw Dapper, we saw Aspire. We know that distributed apps are painful, so or dealing with all these things is hard work. Hopefully with Dapper and Aspire together, dependencies between our apps are easy because service discovery, less, like I said, less packages or things in our code. It's just our code and the logic we need to deal with. Debugging now works. Deployments are a little bit easier. We've got a bunch of resiliency, observability, all out of the box. So with all of that stuff put together, distributed apps are now just a little bit less painful. All right. So
For sure.
thank you
Yeah.
very, very much. If you want all the code, go for it. There's all the demo codes there. Grab that link or scan that code and have a whole ton of fun. And hopefully there's some questions we can answer.
Well, there was a question here for Tarundip. Hopefully I pronounced correct. And just a question like, okay, thanks for the demo and explaining how much of New Zealand and Australia markets is using Dapper and Aspire, right? Well, we know Aspire
Oh, that's a good question.
just went GA
Mm,
now with Microsoft Build, right? But like
that's
before, for
right.
example, with Dapper, were you using on with clients?
Yes. Okay. So the Aspire brand new GA, so that was very recent. Um,
Yeah.
I was using it for real production projects uh, ever since preview 3, I think, or 4, when that project
Mhm.
started. That project's still going, so luckily we're on the GA version. But yeah, I know a few of the big retailers here in Australia. They use Dapper internally. Um, for
Mhm.
essentially they're like big logistics companies that have public stores, big brand names. Um, so Dapper was used quite a lot, and
Yeah.
most of the Dapper deployments from their telemetry I heard the other day, a huge amount of Dapper deployments is onto Kubernetes. So there's a good match there, especially for microservices, right? Uh,
Mhm.
Kubernetes is just more on the complex side of owning microservices. I like the ACA version. Um, the combination of Dapper and Aspire, I can find some demos from the early days already in the previews, but it changed so much that I don't think anyone's used it in real anger just yet, including myself. I'm trying to use it now for upcoming projects and working out some of the quirks. And definitely, we'll have some GitHub issues being put up shortly for some of the stuff I found. But generally, it's really, really nice. It takes away, well, it solves that local dev experience that I had with Dapper. Even though Dapper brings so much to the table for me already, keeping my app simple, the combination of these two makes it just a beautiful choice. It's a bit of that love triangle I said with Dapper, Aspire, and Azure Container Apps. So the managed Dapper in Azure Container Apps is the last piece that makes that triangle very attractive for me.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a new way now for new developers to jump in and experience
Mm.
uh, something new,
Yeah, look, I
right?
think
In
there's a lot of new stuff there, so
yeah,
bit of a learning curve. But I think once the team sort of gets it, once it has their hands on it a little bit, yeah, they'll probably do every project like that. It's sort of like when Azure Functions
yeah,
came out; everyone used it on everything. This might
correct. Yeah,
happen as well, but
yeah.
hopefully we're more mindful that it's there's a place for everything. Don't just blindly use it. Use it when you need to. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Well,
cool.
thanks so much, William. Well, for bringing like this session and those details. I really loved the demos and how you put like well a real world, I would say, example, right? Where you have like multiple
Close. Yeah,
microservices, leveraging Dapper, well, showing like the pain points, right? With the before like .NET Aspire, and yeah, well, what the tooling is just bringing to us now is just
mm,
amazing. And for sure,
yeah,
yeah, I think people are going to adopt experiments like that with the technology, see like how it works for them. And wow, what I love that you didn't have like much time, but also like publishing from your local to Azure, right? With
yeah, yeah. I'll
the
make sure
Azure
that thing works.
developer client, that's amazing, right? So that's
Yes, this is
another
real.
level.
Yeah, this is not smoke and mirrors. This one is real.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah, it
well,
works.
thanks
So
so much. Yeah.
no worries. Thank you for having me, Marcel. We should do this again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we should like book like a session number two only to talk about container apps. I
Yeah,
think that's definitely something that people would definitely enjoy. Yeah, me
yeah,
too.
for sure. I
I'm
can
the
do
same by
that.
myself. But yeah,
Yeah, no,
well, uh, thank you, William. Thanks to the audience. People just like just saying here, like Taron Dip, right? So Jernev as well. Just really
yeah, I
thank
know
you
that guy.
for the session. People really liked, right? This session is going to be recorded, and then probably like the community is just going to check the session later, and well, get to touch base with you, uh,
Mm,
William, and yeah, for more details.
yeah, anytime. Yeah, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, and catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye.